Auschwitz was not a single camp, but a vast system of more than 40 concentration, labor, and extermination camps operated by Nazi Germany in occupied Poland during World War II. Its name has become one of the most recognizable symbols of the Holocaust because of the scale and organization of murder carried out there. More than 1.3 million people were deported to Auschwitz. About 1.1 million were murdered. The overwhelming majority were Jews, but the victims also included non-Jewish Poles, Romani people, Soviet prisoners of war, and others targeted by the Nazi regime. To understand Auschwitz is not only to look at a place, but at a system, a combination of ideology, bureaucracy, forced labor, terror, and industrialized killing. The camp was established after Germany invaded Poland in September 1939, beginning World War II in Europe. The town nearby was called Auschwitz in Polish, but under occupation the Germans used the name Auschwitz. The first main camp, later known as Auschwitz I, was created in former army barracks. At first, it was intended largely for Polish political prisoners, including members of the intelligentsia, resistance figures, and others whom the occupiers considered dangerous. For its first 2 years, most prisoners in the camp were Polish. Auschwitz began as a tool of occupation, a place to imprison, intimidate, punish, and eliminate opposition to Nazi rule. From the beginning, Auschwitz was built on violence and humiliation. The SS controlled the camp, and prisoners were subjected to forced labor, starvation, beatings, torture, and executions. German criminal prisoners were brought in as prisoner functionaries, helping enforce camp discipline under SS authority. This system encouraged brutality, because survival and privilege could depend on domination over other prisoners. Punishments could be imposed for the smallest alleged offenses. Auschwitz I also contained Block 11, known as the punishment block, where prisoners were tortured and executed. Around August 1941, the first gassings of Soviet and Polish prisoners took place there, marking a deadly step toward the camp's later role in mass extermination. Auschwitz expanded rapidly. The most infamous part of the complex was Auschwitz II-Birkenau, built beginning in 1941 a short distance from the main camp. Birkenau became both a concentration camp and an extermination center. Its size was enormous, with rows of barracks, electrified fences, watchtowers, railway ramps, gas chambers, and crematoria. It was designed to receive deportation trains from across German-occupied Europe. In practice, Birkenau became a central killing site for the Nazi plan to murder Europe's Jews. The camp's geography reflected its purpose. People arrived by rail, were sorted, and for many, the process from arrival to death took only hours. A third major part of the complex was Auschwitz III Monowitz, a labor camp connected to the chemical company IG Farben. Here, prisoners were forced to work under brutal conditions in industrial projects, including synthetic rubber and fuel production. The connection between Auschwitz and private industry shows another dimension of Nazi crimes. Human beings were treated as expendable labor. Those considered useful were worked until they collapsed from hunger, exhaustion, disease, or abuse. Those who could no longer work were often sent back into the machinery of death. Auschwitz was therefore not only a killing center, but also a site where forced labor and mass murder reinforced each other. Beginning in 1942 and continuing until late 1944, freight trains carried Jews from across German-occupied Europe to Auschwitz-Birkenau. Deportees came from countries and regions including Poland, Hungary, France, the Netherlands, Greece, Slovakia, Belgium, Germany, Austria, and others under Nazi influence or control. Many were told they were being relocated for work, a deception meant to reduce panic and resistance. Families packed belongings, food, and documents, not knowing that Auschwitz had been prepared as a destination of extermination. The railway system made mass deportation possible, and ordinary-looking trains became part of a continent-wide mechanism of persecution and murder. When transports arrived at Birkenau, SS doctors and guards carried out selections. Prisoners were divided into those temporarily selected for forced labor and those sent directly to the gas chambers. Children, many mothers, elderly people, and people judged unable to work were usually murdered immediately. Of the approximately 960,000 Jewish victims murdered at Auschwitz, around 865,000 were gassed on arrival. This process was deliberately organized to be fast, deceptive, and efficient. Victims were often told they were going to shower or be disinfected. The language of sanitation hid the reality of mass killing, allowing the SS to manage huge numbers of people with terrifying speed. Not everyone murdered at Auschwitz died in the gas chambers. Many prisoners were killed more slowly through starvation, exhaustion, untreated disease, individual executions, beatings, and forced labor. The camp's daily conditions were designed to break the body and spirit. Prisoners lived in overcrowded barracks, received inadequate food, and faced constant terror. Medical experiments were also carried out on prisoners, violating every principle of human dignity and ethics. The victims of Auschwitz included about 74,000 non-Jewish Poles, 21,000 Romani people, 15,000 Soviet prisoners of war, and up to 15,000 others. These numbers represent communities, families, and individual lives deliberately targeted by a genocidal regime. Auschwitz also contained moments of resistance, even under almost impossible conditions. At least 802 prisoners attempted escape, and 144 are known to have succeeded. Escape was extraordinarily dangerous, not only for the person fleeing, but also for other prisoners who could face retaliation. Prisoners resisted in other ways as well, sharing information, preserving testimony, helping one another survive, sabotaging labor, and documenting crimes. On October 7, 1944, members of the Sonderkommando, prisoners forced to work in the gas chamber and crematoria area, launched an uprising. They destroyed part of a crematorium, but the revolt was suppressed. Even though it failed militarily, it remains a profound act of defiance. By late 1944, the Nazi regime was losing the war, and the SS began trying to conceal evidence of mass murder. As the Soviet Red Army advanced in January 1945, the SS forced tens of thousands of prisoners westward on death marches toward camps inside Germany and Austria. Many prisoners were already starving, sick, and weak. Those who could not keep moving were often shot or left to die in the freezing weather. The death marches were not an evacuation to safety, they were another stage of persecution and killing. They also showed the regime's determination to maintain control over its victims even as it collapsed. Soviet troops liberated Auschwitz on January 27, 1945. They found only several thousand prisoners left behind, many of them gravely ill. They also discovered warehouses of victims' belongings, evidence of deportation, forced labor, and mass murder. Liberation did not mean immediate recovery for survivors. Many had lost families, homes, health, and entire communities. January 27 is now observed as International Holocaust Remembrance Day, a date chosen because Auschwitz represents both the specific history of those murdered there and the wider catastrophe of the Holocaust. The liberation exposed to the world the physical remains of a crime that survivors had already been trying to describe. After the war, justice was limited. Only 789 SS personnel from Auschwitz, no more than about 15%, ever stood trial. Some were executed, including former Commandant Rudolf Haas, who had overseen key stages of the camp's development as a killing center. Many perpetrators escaped full accountability, blended back into civilian life, or faced lesser consequences than the scale of their crimes might suggest. Another lasting controversy concerns the Allies' failure to act on early reports of mass murder by bombing Auschwitz or its railways. Historians continue to debate what was known, what was possible, and what moral responsibility governments carried at the time. In the decades after the Holocaust, survivors made Auschwitz part of global memory through testimony, memoirs, education, and public witness. Writers such as Primo Levi, Viktor Frankl, Elie Wiesel, and Edith Eger helped later generations understand not only the facts of the camps, but the human experience of degradation, loss, endurance, and survival. In 1947, Poland established the Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum on the sites of Auschwitz I and Auschwitz II-Birkenau. In 1979, it became a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Today, Auschwitz stands as the location of the largest mass murder in a single place in history, and as a warning about what can happen when hatred, state power, and dehumanization are allowed to work together. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.